The next topic is identity. Many therapists promote the idea because they see it as being an adolescent disease, and again, that stereotype can be skewed because of where the research is done. But they see, because it's essentially seen as a disease of puberty or an illness of puberty, they see that you're deficient in your identity development. And I again think that that notion is very flawed. The reason being, not everybody develops socially on the same slate in terms of identity. Biologically, we react in very different ways. Daniel Goldman has presented work that shows that how we interact has physiological responses. So to assume that every single person develops in a certain way in terms of identity, I think is very incorrect. Also, I think that there's this idea within the therapeutic community that identity is very rigid, that it cannot change, and that it locks in during adolescence. And I think that is incorrect too. I think that based on our experiences, we are constantly reforming our identity right up until the day that we die. And to assume that we reach it at any certain point, that level of stability, I don't see the basis for that because we are always experiencing new things, always shaping who we are based on what we have done and the events that happen to us. The next thing that I want to talk about is puberty. There are drastic problems with the puberty model for eating disorders simply because the puberty model assumes that the person with the eating disorder will be female and that they will develop certain curves for their body, that it will develop at a certain time. It assumes that there is a biological inferiority in women during the time of puberty and adolescence. And there's no scientific research to support that. Certainly puberty is a time where hormones are drastically shifting, so there is some reason to believe that that might be related to how we are perceiving during that time, but men have been shown to have a certain biorhythm just as women do, and so there's no evidence that shows, well, why don't men have the same problem in terms of women? So it is very gender biased in that way. It really promotes the idea that only women have it and that our bodies are basically inferior. The way that we perceive in our brains is inferior. So there's problems in that way as well. And of course, the puberty model ignores every adult case. The puberty model is especially troubling in that it can cause real trivialization of the disorder itself. My own therapist told me that I would probably just grow out of the disorder, and that to me was extremely offensive because what I was dealing with at the time was they were very adult issues. And within a matter of seconds, she had just dismissed it as something that essentially I would just deal with, cope. And it made it seem very insignificant to me, when to me it was very important. So I really did not appreciate that, and it was very patronizing to me when she said that. The next thing I want to talk about is family. Many therapists at this point in time do not want family involved. They think that the family of eating disordered people are very dysfunctional, and of course some of them are, but there are normal people who have dysfunctional families as well. But the point being, they do not, they think that dysfunction causes disorders. I mean, I have to be very careful about how I am presenting this. But they do not present the data that shows that people from dysfunctional homes often grow up to be very, very successful. They have very good terms of logic. They're emotionally stable. They don't point out the research that shows that there's no difference in parenting techniques between those who are the families that are eating disordered and those that are not. So they can't prove that dysfunction causes or relates to disordered eating. Again, I think it is the stress patterns. Some families are more stressful than others, but again, patient perception comes into that. Whether or not you perceive your situation as dysfunctional or not matters in terms of whether or not you are stressed and whether or not you will essentially develop an eating disorder. But in particular, they have shown that the Maudsley method, it's a family-based approach where they actually bring back in the family. They keep the family updated on what is going on. The family is very much an active part, and there is significant reason to believe that that is by far the best treatment method right now. It's better than individual therapy, group therapy. If you have somebody that is within your family that is supportive of you and can help you, then by all means get your family involved. It may be very difficult to make them understand what is going on, but you have the best odds statistically, based on the research that I have done, you have the best odds of getting a good recovery if you have your family support behind you. That is what the research has shown. So if you have a therapist who will not tell your parents what is going on, and obviously, your choice of whether or not you want your parents involved is up to you. But if you want them involved, and you have a therapist that won't tell your family what is going on or advises you to leave your family for a treatment center and have no contact with them, all these kinds of things, really question what the therapist is doing, because statistically they have no data that shows that there's a reason for that. There's really not. If your family is dysfunctional, then just question whether or not that the therapist is making a judgment call. Question whether or not it is in your best interest to be away from your family, and it might be, but statistically speaking, you probably will have a better odds if you don't cut yourself off from them. And one side note to that also, it's not always the parents' fault. Like I said, that they have not they've not found any statistically significant reason to believe that that there are more bad parents in eating disordered families than in non-eating disordered families. And also they have found that non-professionals were just as successful as professionals at helping with treatment. So if you want to go to, say, your priest or a teacher, anybody that you would trust, anybody within your family that you feel comfortable going to, if you feel connected to that other person, or you feel that they will listen, or at least that they'll help you, go to them. They do not have any statistics that show that the professionals are any better at helping with eating disorders than those who haven't been trained. So in some cases, you might be further ahead to save your money and talk to your mom or your dad. Whether your family situation is going to depend on what you do there. But it is an option, and it should be explored. Just be patient with your family, talk logically, show how you're functioning in terms of your mental capacity is working. If they can really understand how you are interpreting in your head and what that eating disorder voice is like, it helps them to not see you as somebody who is selfish or who is just trying to manipulate them or get attention. You really have to sit down with them and say, when I have an eating disorder or when this comes up on me and I struggle with it, this goes in my head. You say this, but I interpret it this way. You have to be very, very clear, or they will not understand that this is something that you're really struggling with. It's not, people do make choices, of course, with their behavior, but that compulsion that is there to do that, you really need to make them understand that there is a part of you that is very rational and understands and sees what is going on with the disorder, but you're fighting it all the time, and you just need a little bit of help.